Good day. This is the Corrupt True Crime Podcast, and I'm Charlie Cruz. Today's episode is about the incredible mechanics and clockwork precision that made the 1978 Lufthansa heist one of the most audacious robberies in American history. A crime so perfectly orchestrated it seemed to defy the laws of possibility itself. 64 minutes. That's all it took to pull off the largest cash robbery in American history. 3 a.m, John F. Kennedy Airport. A black Ford van rolls up to the Lufthansa cargo terminal. Armed men in ski masks walk through the door like they own the place. They know exactly where the alarm system is. They know exactly which supervisor has the security codes. They know exactly where $5 million in untraceable currency is sitting in the vault. And in just over an hour, they're gone. Vanished into the December darkness with more money than any crew had ever stolen from American soil. The execution was flawless. Absolutely perfect. Which makes what happened next even more remarkable. Because the crime itself wasn't what destroyed them. Human nature was. Now you've got to understand something about how this whole operation came together. The mastermind wasn't some nobody. Jimmy Burke was a serious player, an associate of the Lucchese crime family who'd earned the ironic nickname Jimmy the Gent for his outwardly polite demeanor. The kind of guy who'd shake your hand warmly right before arranging your disappearance. And Burke had built a reputation for pulling off well-planned scores. But this one was handed to him on a silver platter. The inside man was Louis Werner, a Lufthansa cargo supervisor drowning in gambling debts. 20,000 in the hole, which doesn't sound like much now, but back then, it was enough to ruin your life. Werner had access to everything that mattered. Blueprints of the cargo facility, security codes, employee schedules, alarm system details, and most importantly, shipment manifests. He knew exactly when the big money moved through, and Werner wasn't looking to play hero. He was looking for a way out. He approached Martin Krugman, a bookmaker and wig shop owner who operated in that gray zone between legitimate business and organized crime. Krugman immediately recognized the opportunity and brought it to Jimmy Burke. And Burke saw the potential immediately. This wasn't just another airport grab. This was the score of a lifetime. Here's what made it so perfect. Lufthansa regularly handled cash transfers from American military bases in Germany back to the United States. Untraceable currency. Bills that couldn't be tracked through serial numbers. The cargo terminal at JFK was isolated from the main airport. Limited overnight security. Predictable patterns. Burke spent months planning every detail. He assembled a crew of specialists. Professional criminals who knew their roles. Gunmen for intimidation. Drivers for logistics. Vault experts. Lookouts. Each promised a substantial cut, with Burke taking the largest share naturally. Werner provided intelligence that turned a nearly impossible target into a vulnerable one. He drew up maps of the facility, identified the 3-hour window between 3 and 6 in the morning when staffing was minimal, explained how to disable the alarm system without triggering backups, even told them which locks they'd encounter so they could bring the right tools. The level of detail was extraordinary. They knew where the cameras were, where the guards would be, when shift changes occurred. They rehearsed the timing until they could do it blind. And the beauty of it was the target itself. That particular week in December, an unusually large cash shipment was scheduled to arrive. Werner knew it was coming, knew exactly where it would be stored. The crew would hit when security was lightest and the vault was fullest.
Building a new product? Temez Labs takes you from napkin sketch to the App Store. Trusted by Fortune 500s for quality, security, and speed. Book your free strategy session at temez.ai.
So the morning of December 11th arrives. The crew pulls up to the cargo building at 3 a.m. They walk in wearing ski masks, carrying handguns. Not for violence, understand, but for control. Intimidation. Within minutes, they've located the cargo supervisor and forced him to disable the alarm system. No backup triggered. No silent alerts. Clean. They systematically round up about a dozen employees. Tape over mouths, hands bound, everyone on the floor. Professional, efficient, no unnecessary roughness. The crew demonstrated this intimate knowledge of the facility that made it obvious this wasn't some random stick-up. They went directly to the high security areas, knew exactly which doors led where, had the right tools for every lock they encountered. The vault access was almost too easy. Werner's intelligence was perfect. They opened it up and found even more than expected. 72 cartons of untraceable American currency, $5 million, plus dozens of boxes containing jewelry they hadn't even anticipated, high-end watches, precious gems, another $875,000 in value. The crew had to make a split-second decision whether to take the time loading all of it. They did. Discipline held. Loading the vehicles took maybe 15 minutes. The entire operation, from walking through that door to driving away, took 64 minutes. They warned the bound employees not to move for 15 minutes. Then they were gone. When police arrived, the cargo bay was empty. The crew had already reached their first meeting point to begin dividing the loot. Check this out, because here's where the brilliance meets human stupidity. Jimmy Burke had given explicit, crystal-clear instructions to everyone involved. Keep a low profile, no flashy purchases, no sudden lifestyle changes, nothing that attracts attention. Sit on the money for months, maybe years. Let it cool down. Spend it slowly, carefully, through legitimate channels. Basic criminal common sense, right? Within days, crew members were buying Cadillacs with cash, fur coats, making large deposits that screamed, "I just came into money." The kind of behavior that makes investigators salivate. And it wasn't just the small-timers being reckless. These were supposed professionals who just pulled off the heist of the century, and they couldn't help themselves. The getaway van was supposed to be crushed immediately at a junkyard Burke controlled. Simple job. Drive it there, destroy the evidence. Done. Instead, it was abandoned in a parking lot where police found it intact. Forensic evidence inside. Fibers, hair samples, the kind of breadcrumbs that gift wrap an investigation. But the real catastrophe was Burke himself. See, Jimmy the Gent had a serious trust problem. Instead of trusting his crew to stay quiet, he started seeing loose ends everywhere. And his solution to loose ends was permanent. Martin Krugman, the bookmaker who'd brought Werner to Burke in the first place, started complaining about his cut. Thought he deserved more. Krugman disappeared. Just gone. Tommy Desimone, one of the gunmen, vanished. Louis Cafora, the driver, and his wife were eliminated. Angelo Seppe, another armed robber, met the same fate. The body count started climbing. Double digits of people connected to the heist, systematically eliminated. And here's the irony. Burke's actions drew infinitely more investigative attention than if he'd just left everyone alone. The FBI had suspected inside help from day one. They interviewed every Lufthansa employee with financial problems or gambling debts. Louis Werner basically lit up like a Christmas tree. Nervous behavior, suspicious phone records showing calls to Martin Krugman, the obvious connection to organized crime figures. Werner was arrested within a year, convicted quickly, 15-year sentence. But getting Werner didn't solve the case. The money was gone. The main crew was either dead or untouchable behind layers of organized crime protection. The investigation hit wall after wall until Henry Hill entered the picture. Hill was Burke's protege, involved in the planning but not the actual execution. And when Hill got arrested for unrelated charges, he made a calculation. Prison or witness protection. He chose survival, entered the program, and started talking. Suddenly, investigators had the inside story, the planning sessions, who did what, the aftermath. Hill confirmed everything the FBI suspected but couldn't prove. The problem was timing. By the time Hill was spilling everything, most of the participants were already dead. Burke himself went to prison for an unrelated conviction and died there in the mid-90s. Werner served about 5 years before parole. The money, almost all of it, stayed missing. Buried somewhere, laundered through legitimate businesses, spent carefully over decades. Only a tiny fraction was ever recovered. Decades later, investigators finally charged Vincent Asaro, another alleged participant, with crimes related to the heist. Big trial, massive publicity. He was acquitted. The case was just too old, evidence too circumstantial, witnesses too dead. Turned out that prosecuting a perfect crime 40 years after the fact is nearly impossible, even when you know exactly what happened.
Oh, hey, friend. Do you like what you're hearing? Now you can have a ridiculously amazing podcast, too. Check out holler.studio to get yourself one today.
Here's what makes the Lufthansa heist so fascinating beyond the sheer audacity. The crime itself was genuinely brilliant. The planning was meticulous. The inside intelligence was perfect. The execution was flawless. 64 minutes, not a single shot fired. Everyone walked away clean. If you were teaching a masterclass in how to rob an airport, This would be the textbook example. But here's the thing about perfect crimes. They're only perfect if perfect people execute them, and perfect people don't commit armed robbery. The crew that pulled off this masterpiece couldn't handle success. Greed overrode common sense. Ego trumped survival instinct. They'd spent months planning every detail of the heist, but gave zero thought to the hardest part, living with what they'd done. Burke's lack of trust turned a solvable heist into a multiple homicide investigation. Every body that turned up brought more heat, more resources, more investigators who wouldn't let it go. The eliminations were supposed to remove witnesses. Instead, they created a trail of evidence far more damaging than anything those witnesses might have said. The Lufthansa heist proved something important about human nature in crime. You can plan the perfect operation. You can have inside information. You can execute flawlessly. But if you can't control what comes after, if you can't manage the greed and ego and trust issues, the crime catches up. Always. Most of those millions are still out there somewhere, buried in backyards, hidden in walls, long since spent by people who got away with it. Burke took the locations to his grave. Werner served his time and stayed quiet. The perfect crime stayed mostly unsolved. But look at the cost. 12 lives lost, families destroyed, all because a cargo supervisor owed 20 grand to the wrong people and a crew couldn't keep their mouths shut and their wallets closed. The crime was perfect. The criminals weren't. And that's what brings them all down eventually. Every single time. The thing about brilliant schemes is that they are seldom brilliant enough. And no matter how clever you are, the house almost always wins. Now, if you enjoyed our show, tap that follow button and 5 stars in our ratings. Catch you next time.
Grep News. Tamez.